Welcome back to Your Average Witch, where every Tuesday we talk about witch life, witch stories, and sometimes a little witchcraft. This week I'm talking with Monica Bodirsky, witch, artist, and creator of Obsidian, a new online space for students of the occult and esoteric arts to meet, share, and create community. We talked about ageism in witchcraft, Lenormand, and about her artist residency witch camp happening this summer. Now let's get to the stories. Monica, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me here.
Can you please introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are and what you do and where they can find you?
Sure, I'll try to keep that relatively brief because I've had lots of different experiences. My name is Monica Bodirsky. My pronouns are she and her. I'm coming to you from Tekaronto, also known as Toronto. That's a Haudenosaunee or Iroquoian word for Toronto. And I am on the lands of the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, Huron, Wendat, Métis, and many, many other Indigenous groups that have called Tekaronto home and still do. So I am an artist, author, and professional consultant whose specialty is tarot. I've created tarot decks and oracle decks as well as Lenormand decks. And the guidebooks that accompany, fairly hefty ones sometimes. I have a bachelor's degree in design, and I taught at OCAD University for 10 years, and I offer programmed art and witchery residencies. I'm an advocate of community and capacity building, and I've done a great deal of volunteer work. I founded the Witchfest North Arts and Culture Festival here, which ran for 5 years. 2 of them online due to COVID. And also, I've recently founded the Obsidian Academy of Esoteric Arts, which is an online space where people can register to learn for quite a wide variety of topics, anything from witchcraft to divination and writing. I tend to put creativity and spirituality together because most of the magical practitioners I've known over the years tend to be artists and artistic.
Yeah.
Also, there's going to be the Inner Sanctuary and Coven online, which is going to be a member space for people, and there will be all sorts of great downloadable information and online Zooms there. I'm of mixed Scandinavian, Germanic, Slavic, and Romani ancestry and grew up in a haunted house. Why not? I call myself a walker between the worlds as well as a witch, and I create drawings and paintings that and writings that come from that liminal space where the subconscious meets the external spirits of time and place. And I do that because I feel it's vital for our survival to ensure we live a balanced life by integrating spiritual and practical. And through my work, I encourage and inspire viewers to examine those crucial and critical intersections between the spiritual and, I suppose, the mundane. So that's pretty much it for me. My website is monicabodirsky.com, and you can also reach me on Instagram at Monica Bodirsky. The trick there is to spell the name correctly, MonicaBodirsky. And also I have a YouTube channel with my name if you look that up.
As someone with a Polish last name, I get the spelling. Thank you.
Thank you. This is then you're a cousin. I'm the Y ending is Czech and Ukrainian, and I'm sure though being on the border, we've had relatives in Poland as well.
Well, actually, my husband's Polish. My family did come from Czech, so that's interesting.
Oh my goodness, whereabouts in the Czech Republic?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It's on Ancestry. I haven't looked at that for a couple of years.
We'll have
I'll
to
accept.
check
We'll be
that.
cousins.
Absolutely. I was correct then. We are cousins.
Also, thanks for being here. I forgot to say that when you at the beginning of the intro.
That's not a problem. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I enjoy the title of your podcast, Your Average Witch. And I'm very happy to be on your show.
Oh, good. Good, thanks.
You're welcome.
So I looked at your art when I was looking over your website. I really like your style, which, by the way, is going to be linked in the show notes. So jump down there and look at it for yourself. But I have never worked with Lenormand. Can you
Okay.
talk about it a little bit?
For sure, for sure. It's one of those unusual things. I think the Lenormand decks are getting picked up now and are becoming more popular. But when I was young, my dad used to travel in Europe a fair bit, and there were a lot of reprints of tarot, divination. Kipper decks is another one, and so was Lenormand. They were reprints from the 20s and 30s as far as Lenormand, and in the 70s, tarot was just becoming popular and being reprinted from the original decks in the early 1900s. So he brought home a Lenormand deck, and I took to it right away. The symbols are much more, I guess, simplistic and straightforward than you would find in tarot, and there are fewer cards. So there are 36 Lenormand cards, and the idea, it is called the Petite Lenormand. The Grand Lenormand has 54 cards, but I work with the Petite Lenormand, and those 36 cards are generally shuffled and put out at the same time. It's called a grand tableau. You lay out all 36 cards
Oh
in
my gosh.
rows. I know. And what you're reading is by proximity. So you can get an overview of everything from that layout, from finances, career, relationships, your health. And you do that by reading lines. So you make simple sentences out of each of the cards, and then you'll read an entire line as a sentence. So it's a very interesting, it sounds a little more complex than it is. Sometimes I use a simple 9 card spread because 9 cards for me have told me everything I've ever needed to know. I do the Grand Tableau spread too, but in that 9 card configuration, which is the 3 by 3 box for tarot or Lenormand or even oracle cards, you can simply look at the card in the center and then start to read top to bottom or left to right, and you pretty much sum up everything you need to know. At least I have. Over the years, you start to see layers of meaning. And just to say the symbols on Lenormand cards being simple, I mean like one is book. So all the things that come with the idea of book, as opposed to a tarot card that has so many, that has action elements, numerical correspondences, astrological correspondences. With Lenormand, it is book. And it's very straightforward relative to the imagery on tarot.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are we all psychic?
What are spirit guides and angels?
What is energy healing?
What's a ghost?
Do I have a soul contract?
What's a soul even?
Hello, Voyagers. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Frank.
And we started Clairvoyaging Podcast when our 5-year-old niece correctly predicted the death of a stranger.
We decided that it was time to learn more about things that can't be easily explained.
Join us as we interview psychics and experts about the basics of esotericism and try to enhance our intuitive abilities.
Come for the development, stay for the underdeveloped jokes.
Clairvoyaging Podcast. Normalize your spiritual journey with us on any podcast platform.
Well, now I kind of want to go do the larger. I think I have a Lenormand back in my room, my studio. That would be, I pick things up at random and then buy them. I don't recommend that. People don't necessarily do what I do. But anyway, I have this deck.
Cool.
So maybe I'll finally. I've gotten it out and looked at it, but I never tried to use it. Do you have any classes for the Lenormand that you can, because I know it's not as popular as tarot, but I don't hear about people teaching that.
Yeah, I teach Lenormand at least once a year, and I also had a guest instructor who is Obsidian faculty. I have hired faculty named Erica Robinson, who also teaches Lenormand regularly. So between myself and Erica, there will always be classes available through my website.
Nice. So
Oh,
what
okay.
does it mean to you when you call yourself a witch?
Whew, well, let's see. I think it means so many things, but I think mostly that I practice ancestral veneration, um, and honor my inherited gifts, which are oniromancy or dreaming true, something we call dead talking or being a medium and talking to the dead, and spiritual advising and herbalism, and absolutely being close to nature and all of its elements, spirits, and creatures. It's also a reclaiming of feminine power. We know that the word witch can carry some very negative connotations. And I think by saying I am a witch, we're taking that power away from others who wish to use it in a negative sense. It's an acknowledgement that, as practical as I am and skeptical, I also feel that we can shift and manipulate energy to alter outcomes, known as magical thinking. I'm also a Hecatean devotee and a polytheist and an animist. So all of those things kind of come together in my definition of witch.
Cool. So you mentioned that your dad got you a Lenormand deck when you were a kid. What kind of spiritual upbringing did you have?
Well, that was interesting. It was kind of what I would refer to as, I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents left a war torn Europe, and as such, they wanted to leave their religions behind. My dad was raised as a Catholic and my mom as a Protestant. And they just thought, you know what, let's not raise our kids with any religion. Let's just tell them that there are spirits, there are things that we understand and that we don't. There are gifts we have, which my dad used to refer to as a problem. And he, for many reasons, and said, go examine other religions and spiritualities and explore those. But we didn't go to church. And I don't mean we were the kind of people who just went to church at Easter and Christmas. I mean, we never actually went to church. My dad found it a bit of a hypocrisy, quite frankly. He thought that too many people just went to be absolved and then lived the rest of the week is not the best people. And he didn't really want part of that. So we were free to explore. And I think I went to every temple, synagogue, church, and, got horrified by some of them. And certainly I never joined any of them, but I wanted to learn about all things religious and spiritual. And I already started to be my little witchy self very early on in life. I just didn't label it at that point. And my parents were very open minded. I mean, hey, it's they still had Christmas or Yule and would say, here, have your, what are you, 10, 11 now? Have a Ouija board, go, stir up some demons, go ahead, or just have fun. They didn't feel threatened by those things very much, so it was pretty open that way. I can tell you honestly, though, it did frighten my mom at times. Some of the familial abilities were pretty potent, and if she preferred not to talk about these things because they made her very nervous. And we grew up in a haunted house. Oh, hey, why not? And so we experienced some very unusual things, but they still kind of like Yep, that's just the way it is. Let's not talk about it.
Can you introduce us to your practice? Do you have any consistent, maybe even daily things that you do?
Yeah, my practice is based on my heritage, and so I tend to refer to it as a syncretic familial witchcraft practice. It does have herbalism, divination involved, and every day it's so integrated. Everything I do is part of my practice. So, when I sweep, I am removing negativity. When I'm doing laundry, I throw in a couple of herbs or essential oils and I'm cleansing any negativity. Uh, Everyday rituals, every time I'm making food, there's some kitchen witchery involved of good intention and health in food. I you know, don't know if that's inherited, but I like to light a lot of candles despite not growing up as a Catholic. Um, I think those are daily rituals. I'm uh, grateful every day. I say a few things. I acknowledge my ancestors every day. It's very integrated into everything I do, I would say.
Would you say witchcraft has changed your life?
Gosh, it's hard to say if you've always
Yeah.
been a witch, but I know I couldn't live without my practice because it's just part of me. It keeps me grounded and supported. I think balanced and at peace. I know that because if for some reason I'm ill or I'm taken away from being able to be as involved in the practice, because sometimes we have more time than others, it makes me quite crabby. So I'm going to say it does keep me at peace. It's fully integrated and it's just such an important part of my identity, I think.
What would you say is the biggest motivator in your practice, and has it changed since you first started?
I think the biggest motivator would be connecting to my ancestry in the spirit world. It does help me feel very, connected, as I said, and balanced. When I see things like the full moon, it reminds me that I'm seeing the same full moon that my relatives and ancestors have always seen, and I find it very comforting because it makes me feel as though I'm part of a long line of devoted spiritual practitioners. It's a very nice feeling. I think that connection is the biggest motivator.
What's your biggest struggle when it comes to your practice?
I think the biggest struggle I have, you know, is this with my practice or with witchcraft in general? I think it's finding like-minded and equally enthusiastic community that shares my ethics and
Mhm.
values. I mean, witches are
Yes.
strong-willed and independent thinkers, thank goodness. Um, but it is like herding cats and finding people who are as loose or organic, or finding people who commit, or finding those who are respectful of age differences. I'm getting older and I find a lot of younger practitioners can be quite ageist and make assumptions about me being horribly, horribly outdated. And that's not true at all. I keep up to speed on things that are happening because I'm very invested in social advocacy. So, I don't know, I think that's a bit of a struggle. Even the witches, I think you need to stay open-minded, right? So you can navigate global change. And even the witch who repeats the same rituals to a T from 40 years ago has wisdom to share and should be listened to. And even though I don't tend to repeat things like that because they're evolving constantly, I would prefer not to be labeled as a relic from the past because of my age. So I think community, it boils down to finding like-minded and enthusiastic community is amongst very independent thinkers is tricky.
Yeah. But it's so good when you do. Right,
It
Hive
is.
House?
It is when you do, though. It's true. It's harder to find folks like that, but I think it is. It's really satisfying when you find other people who really get you.
Would you say that you have any issues with self-doubt or imposter syndrome about your practice? And if so, how do you beat it?
Mm. Not about my practice, but it does crop up with creativity now and then. I think imposter syndrome has come up for me as far as artwork or writing. But I think when I review all of the things that I've done and I stop for a moment, which is not that often, and I actually look at where I've come from and where I am now, and I see actual verifiable proof that I am not an imposter because I've done all of these things. It vanishes. I mean, there is no standardization or certificate that proves you're a witch. So reviewing how much you've studied and what you've accomplished, and I think that helps. I think keeping a grimoire or a journal, uh, book of mirrors, which is reflections for me, I think looking at that, you can see that you've changed a great deal and you've evolved, and that usually gets rid of any kind of doubts that I have.
I agree. I do not journal. I've tried. I have lots of books with the first 3 pages, but the rest is blank. But a bunch of my social group, they journal and they talk about, oh, well, I see that for the past 3 years, I have felt XYZ during ABC part of the year. And I always think, man, that's so good that you can go back and see how you change and how your cycles shift. I know that would be beneficial, but I don't.
No, I get that. I mean, I have a lot of books with the first few pages too. I just read them all together. Yeah, I can't say that I'm really great in regular journaling, but yeah, you do. What you're talking about, I mean, I had a coven that I was the elder in a coven for 11 years. It was a teaching coven. And that is what I used to ask people to do, was to the best of their ability, keep entries at certain times of year at least and compare them over the years, because you'll see patterns emerging. And through those patterns, you have the ability to get to a deeper self awareness and understanding, and then assess objectively where those patterns have emerged, why, and if they're good or if you'd like to change them. It just gives you a better understanding of yourself. And that also, I think, really helps getting rid of any kind of imposter syndrome, self awareness.
I will say that you don't just have to write, because I don't know of anything. I haven't looked. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just that I haven't found anything like it. But do you remember LiveJournal?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved and still love LiveJournal, and I use that I used it like a journal, and I like that they have the calendar so I can go back and look at times. I can go back and look at the month of November of 2002 and see how I was doing and what I was doing. And I can't find anything like that now. I know LiveJournal still exists, but it isn't the same. But
No,
but
no,
I
it
really,
isn't.
I really, I do that, but I am unable to commit to writing, but I think I might do it. Why don't I just go back to LiveJournal? This is a me issue. Anyway, what brings the most joy in your practice?
No, it's I don't. You know what, Kim? I really doubt it's just a you issue. I think there's a whole pile of people out there going, yeah, Kim.
Well, anyway, let's all go back to LiveJournal because I really did use it like that.
Because I taught people and had to keep accessibility very much top of
Mhm.
mind. The audio tools are just better for some people, and even visual journaling. Some of the people I taught were very big into that, just like draw your feelings, and it's all good, whatever works for you. So yeah, let's all go live journal now.
What brings you the most joy in your practice?
The most joy. Oh, I think it's kind of a repetition of what I said before, but it brings me the most joy to connect with ancestors, but also to share. I think to share the experience that I've had and the knowledge and the research and help people who are just starting out or don't know where to begin and they're confused because let's face it, there's so much out there that is perhaps in an echo chamber of repetition from a source that may or may not be accurate. How's that for diplomacy?
Could
So
you be
there's a lot
talking
of
about meta?
perhaps, perhaps. There's so much stuff out there. So it does give me a great deal of joy when people are asking me, and I'm very good with like I don't have an ego. I barely have self-esteem on some days. So it's
No.
it's not an issue for me. It's not my way of looking at it. I'm very happy to direct people to areas that they're looking for. And being a Hecatian devotee, I kind of have always been in those liminal spaces and at the crossroads, assisting people with direction. That gives me a great deal of joy because I think that's part of my destiny is to ensure that people are, finding the information they need or going to the right areas, whether or not that has anything to do with me giving the information. That does make me feel very happy.
I really love that visual. You at the crossroads. I really like that. It's very
Yep,
fitting.
I set up camp there. Yeah, that liminal space, it's part of the family too. You speak to the living, you speak to the dead. So you'll find us somewhere at the crossroads.
Is there anything that you used to do early on, like maybe even in childhood, since you've basically been doing this for a while, for forever? Is there anything that you don't do anymore, and why don't you?
Hmm. Well, I don't tend to whip out the Ouija board and see what's out there anymore. No, not that I'm terrified of it. It's just there's so many better ways to connect and know who you're connecting to. I think, though, the thing that has changed probably the most that I don't do anymore is I don't follow rituals or instructions, not that I ever could, but in a linear fashion. I used to try to force myself to follow things by rote in a linear fashion. And being a circular thinker and perhaps a little divergent in my thought processes, I think allowing myself to approach ritual and practice in a way that works for me is something that just took a few years to because I think a lot of us feel like we're doing it wrong. It's not going to work. And it's such an abstraction anyway when you're young of what energy is and intention that I thought I had to follow things in that very strict and structured manner, but I don't anymore. Through experience, I can see how pulling things together organically and really coming from the heart is just 10 times more powerful than trying to follow instructions.
I think you said you're a circular thinker. I think I'm a koosh ball in a box.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh,
So
koosh
all
balls
these
are
million different little ways of getting to it, but it's still probably in the box.
right. I think the circular, yeah, I can see that. I can relate. I think the circular portion is no matter where I go and how many millions of directions, I come back to the original point. So perhaps I'm just stretching the definition of circle.
It makes me think of a border collie. Well, if you walk with one,
Yes.
they like go out, but then they come back.
Yep. Yeah, very
I also
true.
may not even know what circular thinking is. It's fine.
It's cool. It's
I
totally
can admit
cool.
I don't know stuff.
Yeah, well, you just go. My very loose definition is you wander off into the woods. You stop for lunch, you talk to squirrels, you forget why you went into the woods, then you collect a few things, come back, and somehow you've got an answer to something. That's probably more accurate.
Did you know there was a question when you went in there?
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not.
I relate to that. Do you have a favorite tool? It does not have to be a physical object. It can be like a scent or a song or a theory.
Interesting. Do I have a favorite tool? I am so used to picking up tools as I need them. And sometimes I need them at certain times, and other times I don't. If there's anything I tend to come back to, it's interesting you said scent. It would be Tunisian frankincense. Frankincense is just something that no matter where I am in my practice or what I'm trying to do, as long as I have frankincense somewhere around, it brings me right back to myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the reason I changed the way I used to just say favorite tool, but then like mine is my mortar and pestle. But then I've interviewed some like perfumers, and that is their favorite, like specific smells.
Yeah, I'm have a lot of different senses working, and for me, scent, because I am very sensitive that way. Bit of a super taster, and scent is through the roof. And that is something that seems to cut through nonsense quicker than anything, or just brings me right back to where I need to be. So as far as favorite, I guess I would say it's frankincense, whether that's and I do have different types. I mean, I have a really fine Ethiopian, Tunisian, and they all have their own differences, but they're all beautiful for me. And I sometimes use it in the way that some Romani ancestry and friends have used it, which is to put a chunk just in the old spoon and put it over a candle and heat it up, not to the point of melting, but it just gives off this wonderful light fumes, and it's just gorgeous.
I'm a big pine person.
Ooh, that's cool. Pine makes me itch.
But it smells so good.
It does. It's clean. Yeah. And fresh. I do like tree scents too. I have spruces, I have cypress and pine. I think I've got all the different tree scents as well. Because
It
I
makes me
do
think of dirt. Sorry, go ahead.
dirt. No, that's cool. I have a dirt scent as well.
Well, I used to, when I was a kid, we had pine trees and I would climb them, but you get filthy because of pine sap.
That's true. That's
And
true.
so
The
there's that
resin.
dirt and bark and piney resin smell
Hmm.
all over my hands. My mom loved it.
That is nice. That is nice. I don't know if you go through forests when pine needles, like going through pine forests on a hot day, and you can just smell the forest floor covered in pine needles and sap is just heavenly.
This is hurting my feelings. There are no
Why?
there. I mean, there might be forests here, but I live in Arizona,
Oh,
and I have to travel to get to a forest.
I'll bring one to you.
Ooh.
Hey, it's magic, right?
But I miss that. I do miss the smell and the feel of the sound. I miss the sound of wind in the leaves.
Oh yeah. That that you know that is one of my absolute favorite sounds of all time.
Mine too.
Oh my God, we are related.
It's so good.
Isn't it? It's like this gentle, watery, I don't
Hmm.
know, shh. It's just so beautiful.
One of my friends who also lives in the desert, although they live in the Texas desert and not here, went back east for only the second time in their life. We went to this spiritual retreat called Anahata's Purpose, which I'd like to invite you to. But she calls it nature's applause.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, it used to put me to sleep when I was a kid, and I had the window open at home, and we had some poplar trees and other trees in the yard, and I would just hear the leaves, and it was such a gentle whispering. I don't know. It was just beautiful. It was like tree people talking to you and putting you to sleep.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
beautiful.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How do you pull yourself out of a magical slump?
Talk to the trees. I
Just go
think
stand under it and listen to it.
just go hug a tree. Honestly, it is the first thing I do is if I have a real magical slump and I storm around the house declaring there is no such thing as magic and we've all been duped.
Yeah.
I occasionally I get into these foul moods because I have a lot of deadlines and deadline pressure, and it's not about the magic. It's about being overworked and exhausted. So the first thing I do if I'm feeling that kind of negativity is to stop what I'm doing, just completely stop, sit down, don't have any noise, don't have any of my million distractions going, so I can focus. I always have sound and other things, but just sit, be with yourself, and ask yourself what what is it? Are you low energy? Is it sleep, food? How are you feeling? Do a check in. Make sure you're connected to your body because sometimes we just get so busy we're disconnected. And then ask myself, am I unmotivated? Why? Does it feel like work? Is it the repetition? Do I need to change something? What is it I'm experiencing? And be objective about that. A lot of times people don't bother to sit and try to be objective about how they're feeling. They just are so caught up in their feels they can't be objective. I don't have a problem being objective, so it might vary from person to person, but I would just suggest to others that they just stop for a moment because often it's about being too busy and losing sight of your goals. I mean, why are you experiencing this? Periods of extreme grief for me, I've just had barely enough energy to get up. Do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
if getting up, showering, and getting dressed and just going through the bare minimum survival is the best I can do, that's okay. I let myself off the hook there and go, you know what magic is? I'm alive today. That's it. That's it. And it's okay. There's always going to be periods, I think, where we're more enthused and engaged, and then periods that are a little less exciting or we're just not really motivated for a variety of reasons. It's okay. These things pass. They go through their own cycles, and I guess I don't get terribly worried about it. I never think something's gone forever. I blow things out of my system and sit with it, let it go for a walk, and it just seeps right back in again, and I just start to feel enthused again.
I'm ready for that part. I'm in burnout right now.
Well, that's overwork, probably.
It is. And
Yeah,
I know, but you got to make hay while the sun shines.
that is true. That is true. But you don't want to, make so much hay you can't experience any sunshine.
What is something you wish was discussed more in the witch community?
You know what I'd really like to talk about in the witch community? We need to stand up and be counted. We need to make our presence known. Community commitment is not just to self, but it is like community commitment.
I
It doesn't
agree.
matter. Doesn't matter if we have different beliefs about witchcraft or not, or what you call yourself, magical worker, Wiccan, pagan, you know, furry animal. I don't care. We need to unite because every marginalized social group has understood that, witches, everyone is for themselves sometimes. Everyone kind of forgets that by our differences, we can form a united, strong community, do you know? And I feel discouraged sometimes when people think that following influencers is community. That's not what I mean. I mean, really meeting people, talking to them, accepting their differences of opinion and practices, not seeing it as conflict, but as conversation, and that underneath it all, yeah, so we're all different, but we're all similar in many ways as well. We all, I think, will come down to a very similar um, ethical stance for witchcraft practitioners, and I think it's important. It's important that we put aside the tradition that we're following, and find those similarities, because times can be very ambiguous, and every other community that has ever formed or gotten anywhere, it's been because they have done this. They've united enough to be a solid front and a recognizable community that others might be accountable to or answer to. There's strength in numbers. That's what I wish we would talk about more.
Yeah. Think about the 3 biggest influences on your practice, whether it is a person or a book you read once or a song you heard or even like a scientific theory, whatever. How do they influence your practice, and can you thank them for what they do?
I think I can. Some of these are going to be maybe a bit abstract in the thanking department, but
Good.
you
Blow
know,
my mind.
well, I'm going to be kind of straightforward at first and say honestly, my partner, my husband, family, and ancestors, certainly, I will thank them for all of the difficulties that and absolute survival. I come from a mixed family of people who've been through about 7 different consecutive wars, and also family members who've been kicked out of pretty much every country they've lived in, and they kept going. Their resilience is something that is a huge influence for me when I feel down. That I have to say thank you for. An influence also when I was younger would have been a book I picked up. I was a very precocious reader, voracious little reader, and I picked up a book when I was about 10 from a mobile library in our neighborhood called a bookmobile. And
I miss bookmobiles so much.
right? They were tremendous. I used to ride my bike over there and, take out the 10 that you were allowed to take out at a time, and load up my bike. And I was so happy. We got those for 2 weeks. And the book that made a huge impact in my practice was a black hardcover book. I wish I remembered the title. It was missing a dust jacket, and that's why I don't remember what the title was. But it was a very thick black hardcover book, and probably by today's standards would seem really kind of outdated because of the topics of ESP and other being psychic and astrology and witchcraft practices, but in a very roundabout way, um, covering all of these esoteric topics. And the book looked like somebody had accidentally poured about half a cup of patchouli oil into it. So the smell of this book, because I'm very scent sensitive. So when I opened it and this waft of patchouli came out and I was reading about magic, it was like, whoa.
So that's what
you
magic
know?
smells like to you now.
Exactly, exactly. And I apologize to those who are, a little patchouli averse, but it is magic. And that was where I started, and it had such a huge impact on tying together all of these things I was experiencing and giving it a name and putting it all in the same place and saying, hey, there's other people like this, and this is what it's called. I didn't feel quite cut off from it, nor did I need to badger my poor parents about things they really didn't wish to discuss. So that was, if I could say thank you, Black Book, whatever your title and whoever your author may have been. Thank you,
And the
Patchouli.
person who spilled the oil.
Yes. Thank you, patchouli soaked book, for influencing my practice and making me feel that it was a thing and that I was not unusual, because once it's in print, it's real. It had a big effect on me. Is there any other influences? Oh, so many different people, so many elders within a variety of spiritual communities that had a huge influence in just offering me counterpoint to, I think, the standard Wiccan um, traditions or suggestions. I never was a Wiccan, so all of these other spiritual beliefs really helped me focus on who I was and what I did believe in. I think those are the strongest influences, and I thank all of them.
What advice do you have for new practitioners?
Don't believe everything you see on social media. Don't
Jesus.
do not follow everything you see on social media, first and foremost, because there's a lot of reductive, um, I think, things so pulled out of context, like just light a candle and there you go, it's done. And it's not that simple. And this isn't gatekeeping that I'm talking to. I don't think there should be gatekeeping on information and you can't have access. But the other extreme to that is basically light a candle and everything's taken care of. So I would say really look at the history of witchcraft, look at your ancestry and their witchcraft practices. Be very mindful to look inward and look to your ancestry. Often there is a discussion about paying homage to others by stealing their culture. And
Oh, yeah.
you've heard of that.
Wow, thanks.
And yes, I feel so honored. So I would say, every culture has had witchcraft and magical practices. Just take a look at them, take a look at yours. If for some reason, I mean, we're all free to practice what we want. If you feel compelled to practice something out of your heritage, I'm not the witch police. Go by all means, but do it from a very mindful, respectful place that you've already researched, so you're well aware of what is going on there. It's the lack of context, I think, that is creating a lot of maybe shallowing the pool of witchcraft a little bit, we are going to forget those traditions if we keep lowering the bar. You can call yourself a witch. I have no problem with that. But I always encourage newbies and new witches to read and research and listen to as many people. Listen to a 90-year-old who's practiced, listen to a 10-year-old who practices. Like, make sure you widen that net before you decide what is acceptable and what isn't. There are a lot of very contemporary witch practitioners of very specific ages who will immediately shut you down. I think if you're not if you're boring like I am in the cisgender hetero department, you might not listen to me immediately and shut me down. That shouldn't be. You know, we should all listen to one another, regardless of what stage we're at.
I agree. Just,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love the term crone, though, y'all. Please don't.
Grown?
Crone with a
Crone.
C.
Oh, okay. Oh, crone. Oh, good Lord, no. Crone. It sounds
Could we not?
no, it's kind of, I don't like it. It sounds crunchy.
Yeah.
It sounds brittle. Okay, maybe I'm sensitive to onomatopoeia, which is how words feel and taste because
Hmm.
I'm that way. But yeah, crone has never sat well with me. Elder, on the other hand, I know some people don't like that you're self-appointed in that regard, but I mean it in the sense of old. And it's, you know, I just don't like saying older witch. Ah.
Now that you've seen what it's like to talk to me, who would you like to hear me interview on this show?
Oh, well, I'd like to come back any day. I think, I think we've only scratched the surface myself. I think I would like to see, you've had so many people. I've looked at who you've had on your podcast, and several of them are the people that I was going to recommend. Um, Somebody maybe is Chris Gerke. She takes care of the Witch City Tarot Gathering, and she's a very fascinating person. And I would like to see her on your show.
Is there anything else you wanted to bring up? Anything going on with you? Any questions you had for me?
I think I would like to tell people to go to my website if they'd like the newsletter and information about upcoming decks or books or the Obsidian Academy of Esoteric Arts. I tend to put most things on my website, but you could also find me on Instagram at Monica Bodirsky and on YouTube. And I think that's about it. I do have a newsletter that comes out once a month, just as reminders, and any application for residencies upcoming, which would be next summer on Toronto Island. I do a week-long creativity and spirituality residency. It's called Awakening, and it is in the framework of the elements, and we call it Witch Camp. So if you're interested in that, the applications are now open for summer 2025 as well. And do I have questions for you? Sure. Here's a really basic one, but why did you start your podcast?
Because I'm nosy, and people will answer these questions when I ask them if it's a podcast.
Very cool. What do you get out of being nosy?
I just like knowing stuff. It's just like, just in case I need something, it's tucked away
Oh,
in
cool.
my
So
brain.
information.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm an information hoarder and a story hoarder.
Oh, you too. That's so cool. So am I. Very interesting. Um, Also, how did you learn electroforming?
How did I? I looked on Facebook. There are a few Facebook groups about it, and I joined them and tried it, and it worked.
Ah, okay.
There are some
And you
books,
just,
but they're
yeah.
pretty. I haven't taken chemistry, and there are some books you can get if you understand chemistry and you understand those science words. I did not, so while I have books, I can't recommend any because I don't know if they're good or not.
Okay. No, cool. I was just wondering if that was just something you wanted to try because you make such wonderful jewelry. You thought, hey, this looks like an interesting technique, or if there was something else behind that, if it was something more about the materials or just the look of it. Was it the aesthetic? I guess I was curious as to what attracted you.
Well, I wanted to use bone, and bone is pretty fragile, and I can't solder it, but if I cover it in copper, I can.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Thanks for asking me and making me remember, because I like thinking about that stuff. Well, we are at the last two questions, and question number 1 is, please recommend something to the listeners. It doesn't have to be witchy, it doesn't have to be magical. Whatever you are into this week, recommend it.
Okay, I recommend everyone take a deep breath and ground yourself. We are in a change of seasons, and that can feel a little bit bumpy. So just take a moment to look after yourself, have a cup of coffee or tea, take a walk somewhere, and stop running for a moment, at least long enough to see where you actually are and where you want to go and what your goals are. So everyone just hold positions for a moment and breathe. That's my recommendation.
Oh gosh, I'll do my best. And thing number 2 is tell me a story. It can be something from your life, or it can just be a story that you were told as a kid. I just like stories.
You like stories? Okay. All right, here's a story. So, once upon a time, there was this average suburban family who went out for a drive one beautiful summer's day, and they got into their car and they drove around for a while, had a great time, went to parks. Oh, it was so sunny and gorgeous out. I remember it well, why it might even be about my family. We enjoyed the day so much. We had a lovely wolf dog in the back of our station wagon, and everything was just I couldn't say could get any more perfect, you know. Mom and dad were relaxed. My brother wasn't picking on me for a moment. Everything seemed fine. And when we got home, we pulled into the driveway and walked up to our front door and put the key in the door, and the door wouldn't open. Wait a minute. I don't think my dad even got the key in the door because the screen door was locked. Well, you can't lock this. We didn't have a key for that front screen door, for those of you who have them. So he went to the back door, actually, and tried that wooden door and stuck the key in and turned that, and it didn't unlock. And, well, that was kind of unusual because the key turned, but we couldn't get in. So we ended up going to the backyard, and my dad, because, I'm old enough that we didn't need tight security back then, and he'd left one of the windows in the basement open except for the screen, and the screen you could unscrew. So he unscrewed that little screen and got me to go into the basement window, step down on his workbench, and go let everybody in and see what the problem was. Well, the problem was that the back door was locked from the inside with a lock that could only be locked from the inside that there was no key to. So that was just something he left as an added security, but there was no key for that. And I unlocked that. And then I went to the front door, unlocked the wooden door, and then unlocked the screen door, which would have been impossible to lock because the wooden door was locked. And you cannot lock that screen door from the outside. So that's just a little tale of our little haunted home. And one of the things that we experienced, nobody could ever figure that out because there was nobody in the home. And that was, neither of those locks could have jiggled into place to go into the lock position. So, we just kind of looked at one another. My mom and dad were very quiet about it, had that worried look on their face, exchanged a lot of eye movements that probably they were saying, "Oh God, don't frighten the children." But they could not figure that out. And it was very disturbing. And it was kind of that thing where, we shall never speak of this again. And it left a lot of unrest, though, and went into the giant bucket in our home of, that's just another thing that we can't figure out and we can't explain. They weren't the kind of people to run around and cleanse the space. They weren't the kind of people to start praying. They just were very careful about listening for things and trying to keep us safe. And I'm sure said their own things in private and had their own ways of hanging up things on the doorknob and cleansing and blocking. A few things got shifted around, but they did it very quietly. And I think because they did not want to frighten us, they didn't like the theatrics of, people who engaged in, they were very quiet people. They didn't want to do the arm waving and incense burning. They were just very, let's just calm down and shift the energy in the home. It only happened that once, but that was just one of many, many things. So I hope you enjoyed that little tale.
That was not where I was expecting the story to go. I thought you were going to say you were at the wrong house. And that you crawled into someone else's house.
Oh my goodness. No, it was just one of many unexplained things that occurred.
Huh.
Yeah, right? Little head scratcher there for y'all.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a lovely time sharing and speaking with you, Kim, and I enjoy your work and your jewelry and your podcast, and certainly wish you loads and loads of success moving forward. So thank you again.
Thank you. I wish you the same. And everybody make sure you go down and click the links, go visit the website, sign up for that. Sign up for Obsidian, maybe apply for the artist residency at Art Witch Camp. That would be cool. Go do it. I'm commanding you. Okay, I will see you on Instagram. Bye. Monica, welcome to Hive House.
Thank you.
I have cards in my hand.
All right.
Please say when.
When?
Does your family have any cool heirlooms?
Cool heirlooms. I have to be honest, they lost pretty much everything they owned in several wars. So rather than, I suppose what people would consider a strange place. So yeah, probably disgruntled biker is coming to mind.
Good. I'd hang out with that person. To hear more of the members-only episode, head over to crepuscularconjuration.com. The monthly magic tier will give you access to the monthly Magic Marco Polo group, the private Facebook group, and access to the written monthly spells. There's also Crepuscular Conjurations, giving you bonus podcast episodes, coloring pages, guided meditations, spellcrafting videos, printable downloads, and a lot more. The free Witchy Wonderment level will give you a little sample of everything I just mentioned. You can also visit my shop, Clever Kim's Curios, to get spell boxes, one at a time or by monthly subscription, intentional handcrafted jewelry that I make especially for witches, and handmade altar tools. You can even listen to the full Your Average Witch podcast library, including show notes and transcripts. Check it out at crepuscularconjuration.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Average Witch. You can find us all around the internet on Instagram at Your Average Witch Podcast, facebook.com/groups/hivehouse, at www.youraveragewitch.com, and at your favorite podcast service. If you'd like to recommend someone for the podcast, like to be on it yourself, or if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, send an email to youraveragewitchpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next Tuesday.